Good morning. Is this on? I don't have a big mouth like Brendan, so I got to wear this. I was instructed to. All right. This morning we are in chapter 10 of our devotional book. We've got 4 chapters left going through this book on the study of Genesis.
Which book is no.
Genesis, yeah. We're still in Genesis, and we're going to start at the end of chapter 27. So last week with Brother David finishing up, we saw how Jacob manipulated and betrayed his brother Esau, and we're picking up on that today. And so I'm going to go ahead and read chapter 27, verse 41. So Esau hated Jacob because of the blessing with which his father blessed him. And Esau said in his heart, "The days of mourning for my father are at hand. Then I will kill my brother Jacob." And in the words of Esau, her older son, were told to Rebekah. So she sent and called Jacob, her younger son, and said to him, "Surely your brother Esau comforts himself concerning you by intending to kill you. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice. Arise, flee to my brother Laban in Haran, and stay with him a few days until your brother's fury turns away, until your brother's anger turns away from you, and he forgets what you have done to him. Then I will send and bring you from there. Why should I be bereaved also of you both in one day?" So if we'd like to take a look at the first discussion question, a few pages over, I thought we'd go ahead and just talk about this now. The first discussion question says, how could Esau's anger have led to murder? And what other example of this type of behavior did we see in the Old Testament? What do we think? Cain and Abel. That's and there's some similarities there with the older brother being upset or being jealous with the younger brother and having hate in their heart. What did Jesus say about anger and murder? Yeah, if we want to turn to Matthew chapter 5, the Sermon on the Mount. If someone would like to read Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 23. Thank you. So yeah, that was a very applicable sermon that Jesus was giving pertaining to what we're studying today. In the last part of discussion question 1, how does this emphasize the seriousness of emotions like this?
If you don't get them in check, they're going to just keep going.
Right.
They cost you your salvation.
Yeah.
Consequences are inevitable.
Yeah, all good thoughts. Emotions aren't wrong to have. We're not robots. God didn't intend us to be robots. We see throughout the Bible, even Jesus, during his time on earth, had emotions. He would get worked up sometimes. So it's not a sin to be upset. It's not a sin to have these different emotions. That's just human nature. But the sin comes from your actions after you're wronged.
You know, one thing Jesus did when he was in trouble, he prayed. And that's something we should do. When something's bothering us, talk to God.
Right. I agree.
It's hard to pray when you're very angry.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. You wanna fix it yourself. You want to go out and fix it yourself, and that's where the danger comes.
Well, I find when I'm angry, it's hard to do it because I just don't work together very well when you're really angry.
Right.
It's controlling your anger and, dealing with it instead of acting out right away.
Right.
Don't be impulsive.
Controlling your emotions. Yep. Any other thoughts?
Well, the good thing about this, it says we're studying now, there's so many examples of people in the Bible being human, that it gives us credit for being human too. If we just figure out that the Bible's telling us how we succumb to those situations.
Right. Right. We have plenty of examples how to act, and we have plenty of examples how to not act in the Bible. So we're in an advantage there where we have lessons we can learn from the Bible. Any other thoughts? Okay. Back to our the start of lesson 10 here in our devotional book. Through his own manipulation and deceit, Jacob had obtained the birthright from his brother and the blessing from his father. On the death of his father, Jacob would become the head of the family. But Jacob had much to learn before he became a leader. The first thing that Jacob had to do was to leave home. Most of us remember when we left home to begin a new part of our lives. It may have been to move into an apartment of our own, go to college, begin a job, or get married. Jacob left home for another reason. His scheming had gotten him what he wanted, but his brother was angry and plotting to kill him. Under the circumstances, it seemed better for Jacob to go away for a while.
And his mother wanted him to go because she didn't want Esau to kill him or hurt him or something.
Right, and Rebecca even says she didn't want to lose both her sons, because if one of her sons kills the other, obviously you lose one to death, but then you lose one to exilement, or they're not going to be part of the family anymore, kind of like Cain and Abel as well. Would someone like to read the first few paragraphs of the workout section?
We can see some of the emotions that Esau felt towards Jacob and his treachery. Some versions read, Esau held a grudge against Jacob, while others translate it as Esau hated Jacob. Perhaps the expression Esau seethed in anger describes it best. Jacob had done wrong. Esau was also wrong in allowing anger and hatred to control his actions and lead him to plan to kill his own brother. Rebekah, who always seemed to know what was going on, learned of Esau's plan to kill his brother and told Jacob to leave quickly and go to her brother's family in Haran while things cooled down at home. Rebekah's excuse for sending Jacob away was for him to find a wife for himself and her own family.
Isaac then called Jacob and told him to not marry a Canaanite woman, and instead go to his mother's family and find a wife there. Isaac also blessed Jacob and repeated to him the promises that God had made to Abraham. Before Jacob and Esau were born, God had told their mother that the older would serve the younger. This was God's original intention, and we can only wonder how the story might have gone without the interference of the various members of the family. And so that leads us into question number 2. Question number 2 says, how did Paul make an application of the expression blessing given to Abraham in his letter to the Galatians? If someone would like to turn there and read Galatians 3:14.
That the blessing of Abraham might come on the Gentiles through Jesus Christ, that we might receive the promise of the Spirit through faith.
Thank you. So what do we think on the question? How did Paul make this application?
Blessing that Abraham's family would become a blessing to all the nations.
Right.
Brings that saying, it's the Gentiles, not just Jews, all the nations means the meaning
Right.
of Gentiles.
Right.
And Christ Jesus was the one that was fulfilled in.
Yeah, it's just not just the Israelites and the Jews now. It's all nations. It's everyone. Salvation's available to all. So, any other thoughts on that? I also thought it was interesting the author's commentary here at the end of that last paragraph, that it was God's original intention for one thing to happen, but humans screwed it up like we like to do. But it all worked out for God's plan. So even when we screw it up, God's still there for us. He's merciful, and it can still work out.
I find it a little amazing that Rebecca is an accessory to the cause, and yet we don't hear too much about the rebuttal that Rebecca gets from this, because she stays home.
Right.
She's right there with Esau. Esau surely found out that Bob had something to do with what was going on.
There's a lot more dialogue there that I wish we knew about. I guess it's not that important because we don't know about it, but it would be nice to know kind of behind the scenes what was going on. Okay. We're going to jump back into the book of Genesis, chapter 28, and we're going to skip down to verse 10. If someone would like to read 10 through 15.
Is that Genesis 28, 10 through 15?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now Jacob went out from Beersheba and went toward Haran. So he came to a certain place and stayed there all night, because the sun had set. And he took one of the stones of that place and put it at his head, and he lay down in that place to sleep. Then he dreamed, and behold, a ladder was set up on the earth, and its top reached to heaven. And there the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. And behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham, your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. Also your descendants shall be as the dust of the earth. You shall spread abroad to the west and the east, to the north and the south. And in you and in your seed will all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Behold, I am with you, and will keep you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. For I will not leave you until I've done what I've spoken to you.
Okay. Would someone like to pick up there on 16 and read through the rest of the chapter?
Then Jacob awoke from his sleep and said, surely the Lord is in this place, and I do not know it. I did not know it. But he was afraid and said, how awesome is this place? There is none other than the house of God, and this is the gate of heaven. So early in the morning Jacob took the stone that he had put under his head and put it up for a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. He called the name of that place Bethel, but the name of that city was Luz at the first. Then Jacob made a vow and saying, if God will be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear. so that I may come again to my father's house in peace. Then the Lord shall be my God, and this stone which I have set up for a pillar shall be God's house. And for all, and of all that you give me, I will give a full tenth to you.
Okay, thank you. I've got a few thoughts on that passage, but we can go back to that in a minute. If we want to jump back to the devotional book, under Jacob's dream and God's promise, it says, "We are not given many details about Jacob's preparations for the trip." Verse 10 merely states, Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. It was a long way and would have been at times a dangerous journey. We are not told how many animals he took with him, or if he had any servants to accompany him. Jacob is the main character at this point, and the only one mentioned. Not long into his journey, Jacob stopped at a certain place. This was a special place because God appeared to him there in a dream. As he was sleeping, Jacob dreamed of a stairway resting on the earth and reaching to heaven with angels ascending and descending it. This may have been similar to a ziggurat, the pyramid-like structures with a stairway leading upward that are known to have been built in Mesopotamia in ancient times. It is difficult to know whether or not there was any special significance to the angels. Perhaps the angel's presence was just intended to impress Jacob with the magnificence of God. In his dream, Jacob saw the Lord standing at the top of the stairway. It is interesting that God is usually described as sitting on a throne, but here he is standing. God spoke to Jacob in his dream and repeated to him the same promises that he had given to Abraham and Isaac. This was not the result of Jacob's scheming. It was God's plan all along that Jacob would receive these promises and blessings. These included the land of Canaan, descendants like dust of the earth, and a blessing to all peoples on earth through his offspring. In addition to the promises, God also gave assurances to Jacob regarding his own safety and God's care for him. These are especially important since Jacob was fleeing from his brother and in the middle of a long and potentially dangerous journey. Jacob's reaction to this dream was not surprising. He was afraid. Would we be any different if we had experienced a dream like this? It reminds us a little of Moses, who was also afraid when God appeared to him in the burning bush. We could take a look at question 5. Question 5. We see that Jacob made a vow. Is it necessary to make vows like this? Would it not be better to simply serve God without making it conditional?
I don't know, sometimes it seems like it's worth more to you and holds on to you if you're more vocal about it. Open talking to God. Maybe even to the point where somebody else hears it maybe. Not that they hold you accountable to it, but something about if you open up and talk to God openly, verbally, it seems like it means more to you that you might hold on to it longer.
Right. Like if you're trying to lose weight or quit smoking or whatever, I mean, you tend to share that with someone you care about because sometimes there is accountability there, but sometimes it's good to just get it off your chest and, like you said, kind of have that vocal. What else do we think? I have written down that Jacob based his vow on God's promise to him. If we go back and look in chapter 28, in verse, starting in verse 20, he says, "If God will be with me and keep me in this way that I am going, and give me bread to eat and clothing to put on." So he's making his vow only if God fulfills his promise. So I think he might have had, his intentions might not have been great here because he's basing his vow on, well, if God does this for me, then I'll fulfill my promise. So it almost seems like he didn't have enough faith that God would follow through. So
It's got to be pretty assuring in verse 15 where God says, I'm going to be with you till I get my promise done. So that,
you would think, yeah,
you could almost go out, walk off a cliff and think, well, he's going to save me because
right,
he's going to keep you alive while this is promise going on.
right,
And especially maybe with the struggle with Esau. He's still saying, well, Esau's going to chase me down and kill me. Well, God's saying, no, he ain't.
right. Yeah, I agree. Which is easy for us to say when we're not in that situation, that he lacked faith, but I think he did lack a little faith.
I think, we can relate, well, God has promised us a certain thing also, if we do what he said, then he will give us eternal life. So, it maybe is, in a way, is a one-on-one thing, but if we have faith that, God's gonna uphold his end of the bargain, we just
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts?
I think vows like this are usually made during a time of great emotional distress. We hear, or we may have thought ourselves, if you'll help this thing happen, or, save this person's life, I promise to do this.
Yeah.
And, it's part of the grief process, bargaining.
Yeah.
I think it's a natural human thing, it's a good thing to cry out to God when you're in that, because he's running from his brother and he has this dream that he's afraid of. So it leads him to, I think, maybe to try to ensure his safety. And I don't remember if he fulfills this promise, later or not.
Right. I agree. It's good to put yourself in his shoes, and like you said, all the emotional distress he was going through too.
Fisher, I thought this was interesting along about Jacob and Esau. See, Isaac sent him off he didn't want him to marry anybody from the Canaanites. And so Esau, it says, Esau saw that the daughters of Canaan did not please his father Isaac. So he went to Ishmael and took Mahalath, the daughter of Ishmael, Abraham's son, to be his wife. I think that was interesting because he wanted to please his father. So
Yes, yeah,
even though he didn't go somewhere else, but he married one of the relatives there.
yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts? Okay. Let's see where I left off here. Okay, we're on the top of page 62. Jacob realized that he was in an awesome place and that the Lord is in this place, and set up a stone pillar to memorialize his dream. He consecrated the pillar with oil and also gave a special name to the location, Bethel, or the house of God. Before leaving that place, Jacob made a vow. It was a conditional if-then statement. If God will do this, then I will do that. It is interesting that Jacob would make such a statement, especially when we consider that he is fleeing for his life, and yet he makes this arrangement with the Lord. There's no question that God could do this for him, but did Jacob have the right to make such a statement, such a conditional statement? Some commentators have suggested that this was the form of a covenant agreement, but even so, it seems a little presumptuous on Jacob's part. And so we're going to read a little bit of chapter 29, Genesis chapter 29. And the first 20 or so verses, we know the story of Jacob finishing his journey, arriving. I believe he was met by a servant, and then he sees Rachel, and then he falls for Rachel, and he forms that covenant with Laban. And so I'd like to pick up in chapter 29, verse 21, if someone would like to start there and read through 25, 21 through 25.
Then Jacob said to Laban, "Give me my wife. My time is completed, and I want to make love to you." So Laban brought together all the people at the place and gave a feast. But when evening came, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob. Jacob made love to her. Laban gave his servant Zilpah to his daughter as her attendant. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?"
And would someone like to read 26 through 30?
Laban said, "It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we will give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years." Jacob did so and completed her week. Then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to his daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and served Laban for another 7 years.
Okay, so we see the tables turned a little bit on Jacob. He'd spent the last chapter or two being the deceiver, and now he was the one being deceived.
A lot of people, leave the impression that he had to work another 7 years to get Rachel, but actually, he made him wait a week, and then he gave him Rachel for his wife, and then he worked the 7 years. So he didn't make him wait another 7 years, but he did work for Laban for 14 years.
And it says in the Bible it didn't seem like more than a few days. So Jacob felt very strongly about Rachel. Okay, we'll switch back to the Devo book under Jacob Meets His Match. Jacob finally arrived in the region of Haran, and met some shepherds waiting to water their flocks. He inquired of Laban and found that he was in the right place. Then Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, and he was so taken by her beauty that he single-handedly moved the heavy stone from the well and helped her water her father's sheep. Jacob soon met Laban and remained with them for about a month. At that point, Laban offered Jacob a job and asked what his wages should be. Jacob replied that he would work for 7 years for Rachel as his wife. Laban had 2 daughters, but Jacob's love was for Rachel. The 7 years of labor was to pay the customary bride price. Isaac had not sent any gifts with Jacob, as his father had done for him. He had given Jacob the blessing, but none of his inheritance. Laban saw 7 years of free labor and a possible way to marry off both daughters. It is little wonder that he agreed. So Jacob worked his 7 years and then asked Laban for his wife. Little did Jacob suspect that the unscrupulous Laban would substitute Leah, his older daughter, for Rachel. We can only imagine how Jacob felt in the morning light. The trickster had been tricked, the schemer was out-schemed, and Jacob had the wrong wife. What Rachel and Leah thought about the arrangement is not mentioned. How did Laban keep it a secret? What did he do with Rachel while he played his trick? The whole story shows the total control that the father had in a patriarchal society. Jacob complained to Laban and eventually bargained for Rachel as well. Jacob was married to Leah, but his love was for Rachel. It is his preference for one over the other that sets the stage for the rest of the events that follow in Genesis. I'd like for us to look at question number 3 now. In our study, we have seen Jacob to be a self-centered schemer. Even so, God blessed him. In what ways did God bless him, and why did he do it?
He did get a woman that he loved, he fell in love with. That's one, he had some other things that he had to take along with it, but he still, it says he loved her, so
Yep. What else?
His father's blessing. God had said the younger was going to serve the older, so that was the plan all the whole time.
Right. I also have that even later in life, he was blessed with a great family, a big family. They had their own problems too, we know that, but family, money. I've got in here legacy. Some people don't like that word, but he did leave a legacy, and his family did too. It's also a good example of God being a merciful and forgiving God. Some of the most famous people in the Bible, Jacob being one of them, we read about their good days and we read about their bad days too. And Jacob had some bad days, but he was forgiven, and it was God made it a part of his plan, and God keeps his promises.
I think the fact that he mentions Jacob's preference for Rachel over Leah is a little harsh, because Jacob wanted Rachel from day one. Leah was not the one he was in love with. It's different from a parent having a preference, which it ends up leading to that. But I mean, I don't discredit Jacob for preferring Rachel over Leah. That's the one he was in love with.
Is that what the commentator said?
Well, it says it is his preference for one over the other. That sets
Yeah.
the stage for the rest of the events that follow in Genesis. And yes, but at the same time, who would blame him?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't catch that.
And he did end up serving Laban very faithfully
He
for
did.
all those years.
Yeah.
So he had good things to go.
And that kind of leads us right into our question number 4. How did Jacob's experiences with Laban mature him? It did, for sure. He was on the other end of that this time.
I think it also adds to the priority of life. I think as he has his 12 children later, it's the fact that I'm serving God as more important to serve God, because that's where the promise is coming from. I think he's learning that process
Yeah.
at this time.
Yeah, I agree. He leaves home. He sees life for what it is. His priorities kind of shift for the better. I wrote down that Laban deceived Jacob just as Jacob had deceived his own family. And being on the other side of that manipulation, like you mentioned, forced Jacob to experience the injustice that he had previously done. And so that was a big turning point for him. Okay. I'll go ahead and read the last paragraph here. There is a lot of drama and tension in the story of Jacob as he manipulated his brother and deceived his father, only to be tricked himself by Laban. This reminds us that the Bible is a book about God, but it is also a book about human beings. God is perfect, but human beings are imperfect. And so the heroes of the Bible, like Jacob, were human, and we see them all with their imperfections. There's a great lesson here. If God can use a person as imperfect as Jacob, then he can use us as well. And again, we do see that throughout the Bible. David's another good example. The highs and lows. Jonah. Moses. So the last question they've got for us. What significance do you see in Jacob's dream of the stairway to heaven? And how did Jacob respond to the dream?
Well, if you look at the last part of it, where it especially says angels ascending and descending up and down, it's kind of like a God standing at the top. Okay, I'm in direct communication with the earth here. I'm sending people down to do what I'm willing. They're coming back with the messages from that. We want you to understand that's the direction of communication that I have with humans.
Yep.
Is that I'm here, and there's a ladder, and I know what's going on, and I can control what's going on.
Yeah, good thought. I think that's good imagery for that. What else? I've got that this was really the turning point in Jacob's life and his maturity, in his walk with God, this dream. He was running away, and he was running away from the consequences of his own actions. He wasn't just running because he had been wronged. He was the one that wronged his family. So it was his fault he was running away in the first place. But God chose to mercifully reaffirm his promises. And Jacob, just like we are, whenever we wrong other people, whenever we wrong God, he was in no position to earn God's favor, yet God still promised to be with him. Are there any other thoughts on that or anything else in this chapter?
I think, like Ed was talking, the imagery of God being at the top of the staircase told Jacob who was in charge and really who was orchestrating events and who he needed to put his own trust in. And his promise sort of reflects that, that he's realizing that, whereas he was taking things into his own hands earlier.
Right.
And later, and I don't know if we get into this with the next chapter, but when he starts gathering his own flocks, God is letting him increase his own flocks. He's not doing it.
Right. And that goes back to not trying to force anything. Let God do his work too. And you're trusting God. Any other thoughts?
We know the ultimate that Jacob does become the man above, and Esau and all serves him, and everybody starts serving Jacob and his children. But what's unique is Jacob runs away from Esau. And Jacob's supposed to be the ruler, and Esau's supposed to be the follower. But when he left, Esau must have been in charge of the family.
Right.
Because when Jacob, later on in the scriptures, when Jacob comes back, he's still afraid to face Esau for thinking that Esau's going to, and Esau becomes pretty powerful at the time.
Yeah. And like we mentioned, it would be kind of cool to know what was going on back there. Yeah, good thought. Are there any other thoughts? I thought I timed it perfectly for the first bell, but they're back there sleeping. They haven't rang it yet. Yeah. Okay. Class dismissed. See you next week.
Now, was God in charge of that?
Might have been.